you're most exploitable again in your routine. People go, oh, it's not that dangerous. This is broad daylight, guys. They've already showed the propensity for violence. You've already met the criteria for self-defensive life. You got to be prepared. Look, you could see how man, I would have had 15 rounds on that dude moving laterally. He shoots 3 slow aim fire shots. Boom.
And then look, still has the pin.
Always hard focus yourself to do the right thing.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Reacts thingy-majiggy that we call this. I am Austin Lester, the co-host of this show. I mean, I guess today I'm the host, but my co-host for today is Mike Glover. Yeah, do whatever. We don't even have to be hosts. We could be like,
what am I looking?
Something. You can look at whatever you want. I mean, probably the camera though.
There's so many set up right now.
I know Julian's a beast, man.
We invested like $50 in a new setup, and there's cameras everywhere. So it's kind of cool that we're doing that. Big shout out to Anthem Snacks for providing free beef jerky. I've shoplifted more Anthem Snacks beef jerky from my store.
The fact that you say it's free is like that tells it all.
Danny, the retail manager's like, dude, somebody keeps jacking on the beef jerky. I'm like, bro, set up the cameras. And I'm like,
and it's Mike in here, like stealing it out of his own store.
It's so good.
Cool. So today, this has been a video that's been circulating the interwebs, and we talked about it briefly the other day, but I haven't actually watched the whole thing all the way through. But it's the former Oakland police officer that got mugged. Kind of a crazy circumstance.
So guarantee that this guy's, it's not his first time getting mugged in Oakland.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not. Yeah. He's dealt with thugs before, for sure. You can tell by the way he kind of goes about this. But so let's roll the video. That's a smart tactic. They've done that before.
Oh, just pause it right here. So, yeah, it's identified tactic, right there. So all the things that you see in efficiency of whether that's them moving to the person they intend to rob, or just the efficiency in their movements. Like they had a plan.
Oh yeah.
They've likely done it before. They're parked on the other side of the pump. They identify their victim, then they roll in and they do so very efficiently. So a couple of things. We teach this because we teach people you are most exploitable at patterns of routine. And one of the things that we have in common, unless you have an electric car, a Tesla, is you're likely to pump the gas the same way. So if we look at patterns of routine, he pulls up, he puts his the nozzle in the tank, and then he hangs out.
Yep.
You're most exploitable again in your routine. So they come around, they have their exfil vehicle. It's set up to where they could take off. The signature of what's going on is very small, right? Because there's the only people who could identify what's going on at that pump are people near that pump. There ain't nobody near it.
No, and you have to be close.
You got to be super close to even identify like, hey, something's going on. And then that, by the time they go, oh, somebody's getting jacked, it's too late. It's already been done.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, and I said this in another video, I think too, but I mean, it's interesting to see predators that have no training whatsoever implementing tactics that are used even by the military, by guys that are trained to do things like this, and they have no formal training in it. And it's like, I mean, that's literally like a tactic. And
they likely have a driver. I don't know how many suspects there are or were. There's likely a driver whose only job is to drive. You had the guy who came around and who had the initial confrontation. And as you can see in this circumstance, he was backed against the hose, and so he has nowhere to go, which is a smart tactic, right? Because they're breaking through the in between that pole and the pump, and they push him against the hose, and now he has nowhere to go, and now he's getting jacked.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Oh, dang.
2 shots.
Okay, back it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where they screwed up. And man, I'm trying to see where he pulled that pistol from. So here's where they get discombobulated. You got one dude who's working through the vehicle. They already jacked him. They already took his personal possessions. Now you had a plan, and likely what's taking place now is opportunistically, and I hate to say it like that, but they're taking opportunities to take other stuff. And so he's opening the door, and that's probably not in the plan.
Right.
So that's causing them to take time, and they're not looking at the guy they just robbed, which in this case, you got a retired police officer who's carrying, he might be a reserve officer. A lot of guys who are retired maintain reserve status. Yeah. So he can carry a badge and a gun. And then it looks like he pulls this pistol from his pocket.
Yeah, it looks like he's reaching down right there for it.
Yeah, this is
Oh yeah, that's out of his pocket.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how this goes.
So first shot, second shot. And then he gets hit right there.
Okay. So a couple things. One, we teach this protocol in assessing multiple targets, multiple threats. And what I've seen kind of the politics behind this, where they've actually called the guys who were shot victims. In a criteria of self-defense, you're assuming when using deadly force that everybody that you're shooting or engaging is a threat to your life. Mm-hmm. They already jacked him, so they've already either showed guns or put him in a position where he's trying to defend his ground, and he engages 2 of the guys. Now, they don't have guns pointed at him, but they don't have to.
No.
They've already met the criteria of deadly force. Now, if they were running away, that would be different. But they're in the proximity of him still conducting the act of, in this case, violence in association with Jack and stuff. But I saw people go, well, he should have just let him go. Well, that's not how this works. In many instances in self-defense, randomly, because the guys who are conducting the act of violence are shooting and killing the innocent people because they're getting over emotional. They overreact. They get scared. They turn the gun and shoot. That could happen in milliseconds. So to judge this officer, or in this person, in this case, this civilian, for shooting these guys in the proximity of him, there's no argument to that. Yeah. He did the right thing. So he shoots these 2 dudes. I'm assuming he puts a couple rounds in each of them. And then he steps over the hose. And I think that's where he makes the mistake. He has relative cover. Mm-hmm. Relative cover is not cover. Cover protects bullets. Concealment masks your signature from people who are shooting at you with bullets. Relative cover has the combination of proof, cover that's going to provide protection, but also some that's not. He leaves that cover to get an advantageous position to stop the other shooter or the other robbery suspect. And I think that's where he made his mistake. Yeah. And you could see where he got shot. He got shot in the open. Yeah. Confronting the suspect.
Yeah, and something else I think about too is, and to kind of tie into your point of like his justification in this, is whenever they have the force, right? Even if it's not, even if it wasn't a weapon, they have numbers, which is obviously that's not an equal scenario for him. But the other piece to this is, what is his behavior that led them to continue to act on this robbery, right? So now they're becoming opportunistic. It's not like they acted and left. They acted and then they're like, oh, we're going to keep this thing going. Yeah. And because there wasn't any much resistance early, he's just kind of like, okay, do your thing and then go. They continued to take and take and take. And you see that profile in a lot of people in these circumstances where the robbery or the robbers rather continue to take as people just give, right? Because the ideology for most people is like, oh, he's just taking my stuff. You can have my stuff. Well, he's like, oh, cool. You're going to give me that? Well, I'm going to get the shit out of your car too. Oh, you're going to give me that? Cool. I want the rest of the stuff. Oh, cool. I want your sneakers. Hey,
yeah,
cool.
And where does it end?
Right.
Like, and the argument that he should just allow people to rob him with the guess that they're not going to do anything intentional or harmful, they've already showed the propensity for violence.
Correct.
They're violently assaulting him. You don't have to hit somebody.
No.
When you point a gun or you threaten with a gun that I'm taking your stuff, you've already met the criteria for self-defense of life, because I'm not taking the chance of you favorably robbing me violently and not putting a round to me. So what you see, and that's a good point, is what you see is the tactics of saying, hey, man, he's in a surrender position. Like, hey, man, I don't want any problems. Take the stuff and go. And then they continue. One dude pops smoke, but these dudes, one good guy goes in the car, and the other dude's standing right next to him, and then he goes to work. Indeed, look, are you willing to take the risk? Yeah. And if you've met the criteria, in which this case he thought they did, commit. And that's what he did. Yeah. I think he's overcommitted here to a point. But I'm in no position, I don't think anybody's in a position to judge this man for defending his life and then taking the actions appropriate to continue to defend his life, because we can't see in his situation. Now, we do teach decision point, which is the criteria to make the decision to use deadly force, and which he did. And then we also teach how many rounds do you, like, I asked the question, I put up 2 targets in front of students and I say, how many rounds do you give each? Most have never asked themselves that question. And in this case, it's real life. And what you'll hear from some people is, I engage one person until the threat's eliminated. Well, in this case, if he would have did that, he would have been too late getting to the other guy, and then the dude would have been potentially drawing a gun, in which this just happened. The third dude, or the guy who's in the car that's pulling off, just drew a pistol and is engaging him in the middle of a gunfight. Yep. That's the risk he took, but that's the risk that you'll be in when not understanding how this works. So train in identifying threats and shooting according to the situation, how many rounds you want on each target, which in this case, I believe it was 2 rounds per target, and then he transitioned, which worked out perfectly. And then train what happens after the fact. Right. As this evolves and he gets hit, he's going to break contact. But this is where it gets super dangerous. He might have survived this with no shots on his person if he would have maintained relative cover, if he jumped the hose the other direction and went around the back of the vehicle. Yeah. But instead, he chose to pursue, which, again, I'm not judging.
And I think the other thing there, too, is also stress management. Learning, because I think he probably, had he had another fraction of a second and just kind of breathed a little bit and got out of that tunnel vision of that chase, he probably would have thought of that.
He was in fight mode, right?
Right.
He's sympathetic. He's fighting.
Yeah. If he would have been able to disconnect, he probably would have come back, probably got around the other side of the vehicle, been able to engage from cover. So,
but again, I mean,
who
are we to judge? This dude's using sound tactics up until the point he gets shot, but sometimes that just happens, man.
Right.
Let's see how this ends.
So he's still getting shot at.
Yeah, and then it ends. So I know he survives. He was in stable condition last time I checked. Got shot 6 times.
Jeez.
Kills one suspect, which is the dude who slumped, and then injures another. And the guys in the vehicle, I believe, last time I checked, were still on the run.
Wow.
This is broad daylight, guys.
Yeah.
Like, this is happening in our country in major metropolitan areas where crime is estimated to be up 50+% in these areas. Up in Chicago, it's up 50%. Yeah. Murders and homicides up 50% from the normal. Yeah. We're looking at a crime wave because of the policy that has affected the governance of these municipalities, and criminals are the only ones who are winning. And it's disgusting, but I know this part of Oakland. I used to work around here. I've trained law enforcement officers around here, and this people go, oh, it's not that dangerous. That's because you just happen to fall into the pattern of life where you don't see this kind of danger. Right. This dude's pumping gas in broad daylight and gets jacked. Yeah. By 3 dudes, by a 4th dude who's probably driving the car. And you got to be prepared. Train, induce stress in your training, and be prepared for everything.
All right, so this one took place in Vegas a couple years ago after an accident. I think it was a 3-car accident. And this guy they approach as a potential DUI suspect.
In the back of the other truck that was
police officer.
Yep.
Well, they're saying that you took something out of your truck, threw it in the back of another truck, and then that truck left.
I never did that at all.
Never did that?
I swear to God, on my
Okay.
life.
You willing to do a field sobriety test for me? Huh?
No.
You're not? Okay. Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
The what?
Huh?
The champ light?
I'm sorry, what?
What light did you say to turn on?
I didn't say turn off any light. I said, are you willing to do a field sobriety test?
I said no.
And I said, turn around, put your hands behind your back then.
Why?
Because you're under arrest for DUI.
For what?
For what?
Yeah.
Because I think you're impaired.
I'm not impaired though. I'm just driving home from work.
Okay, then why won't you do a field sobriety test?
I'm not doing it.
Huh?
Because I don't need to.
You don't need to.
I don't need to.
You're leaning on your truck. You mean you don't need to?
I mean, you're leaning.
You're absolutely. You don't need to. You're
leaning-
absolutely right. You
You're
do
leaning.
not.
You're leaning on.
You
my
do not
truck.
need to.
Okay.
So turn around, put your hands behind your back.
No.
Okay.
No.
Ken. Don't touch it! Don't touch it!
Oh,
this
this
is
is
the
another
other officer's camera. It looks like.
Okay. Interesting.
Control Tom 207. What license plate were we given?
Oh, with the pencil. Look at that.
Man, drop your ticket book.
Yeah.
Control, shots fired. Control, shots fired.
He's still got the pencil.
does,
on that
yeah.
grip? All right, let's go
Yeah.
back to the beginning, the first engagement. Look, the when he starts moving away, the protocol is obviously detain. He's evading detainment, and so as he's walking with them, one of the things that's concerning for all officers is the time in which things happen. He's reaching inside of his waistband, whether it's pulling up at his pants, whatever it may be. I don't see his hands. One of the problems that I always try to negate for officers is when officers draw pistols, it's not like a civilian drawing a pistol. If you're a civilian, you draw a pistol, it's not to mitigate risk. Now, there are opportunities where you can. I won't say it's all or nothing, because if you already have a gun and you're walking in your home and you come across a kid stealing your TV, well, you could give those commands, and that's the one time that you could use that to mitigate risk. But if a civilian's drawing a pistol, they're drawing it to defend life. In this case, you have a guy moving away where you can't see his hands. The announcement of the presentation of his pistol and saying hands, hands, hands is super important. Because what I tell people, whether it's civilians or law enforcement, when you ask the question or give demands, you're putting them at a crossroad. So let's say you say hands, 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 and they continue to move their hands towards their belly band. That is their intent. So I'm putting them at the crossroads of a decision, but I'm also able to see what their specific intent is. In this case, it's something malicious. He's walking away. He's digging in his waistband. It's probably to hold up his pants because they're sagging off his ass. But then he heads straight towards that bush and then goes to bend over. Now here's the double-edged sword. The dude reaches in the bush, and this is the classic Lethal Enforcers video game.
Yeah.
Where you're holding down on the suspect, and then you're waiting for, is it the comb, is it the cell phone, or is it the gun?
Yeah.
And this is where officers get criticized all the time because they are put in these situations that take milliseconds. He could have a gun in his hand, and shoot that officer in fractions of a second, milliseconds, and that officer doesn't have the opportunity to potentially combat that. Now, this officer, whether it's wrong or right, whatever you think, decided to break contact to seek cover, to get a better alignment on the shot, when his other tactic could have been follow the suspect with a gun pointed at his back. So now he's closing the distance instead of creating the distance, and then can immediately respond. But he chose to break contact, which I'm not going to debate with. So let's play it until he breaks contact on the back end of the vehicle. So he doesn't have his gun out. He's tracking him.
You can see a shadow. He's reaching for his gun.
And now he's going for his gun.
And then
But what I don't like about this is that's where he should have started engaging. The problem is the other law enforcement officer is the one who engaged. This guy, while breaking contact, we're not turning our back to the enemy and running to cover. We are engaging because you're out in the open, suppressing if you have to, but engaging the target while moving to cover or getting off the X. But instead, you could play this part. He literally just like strolls back to his location, gets cover, literally like slow aim fire, gets front sight, and drops the dude. But if the timing didn't work out in that case, where the other officer was putting rounds to divert the guy's attention, which wasn't the intent, he wanted to engage him to stop the threat, then that officer who ran away kind of seemed, I don't know the pace, I'm not going to judge him for that, but he could have got shot in the back.
Definitely.
Which is scary.
Yeah, and I mean, so two things to add to all that I saw was, one, he was really close to that guy to start with, and it's likely because he believed him to be a DUI, so he's trying to smell his breath, and I know the tactic. You know, he's up close trying to say, well, can I smell ETOH on this guy? That leads me to believe, you know, that's their line of thinking as they approach this kind of a thing. Well, being that close already puts you at a disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe an advantage depending on what the tactic is that you're prepared to do. But as the guy started to walk away, I also agree that at least less than lethal should come out, at least. And then as that guy is reaching into the bush, I think turning and sprinting away, it's hard to judge that, you know, again, but it's like, also, he could have just broken off that X in another direction, drawing, and then engaging. Yeah. I mean, because a little forethought maybe of thinking, hey, I've got nothing back here to worry about.
Yeah.
Shooting in any of these directions gives me plenty of room. I mean, taking that, stepping off the X to one side or the other, preferably obviously away from your partner, gives you plenty of room, plenty of time to take that shot without having to turn your back to the enemy.
Yeah, one thing we teach, and this is just from the camera perspective because it looks like he just turns his back to it. One thing we teach in tactical training at Fieldcraft is movement is synonymous with survival because it's about the consideration for the shooter. If you're moving out of depth like he was, the shooter doesn't have to deviate his position because you're at the apex of it. So if this is a miss, that's a hit. Very minor deviations and a miss versus a hit. But if you're moving laterally, which would be away from the cover of the vehicle, you're forcing the shooter to track you and move their hips in position, which is very difficult for somebody to do with one, understanding how to shoot a moving target, but two, positioning their body alone. He could have stepped off the X, moved laterally, like you said, engaged his threat, and it would have been done instantaneously. Right. Because the risk to this officer was he almost got shot in the back. He could have got shot in the back. But the other risk is the other officers in the open too. So then you have two officers in the open, and lucky for this officer, the other officer's shots drew him in. He started lackadaisically shooting because, you know, he's playing Call of Duty in his head. He's also intoxicated, so it's like Call of Duty drinking beer. Yeah. And then it works out the way it works. Now he does seek cover properly. He creates distance from the cover, which I always recommend because vehicles are big magnets for bullets. And if we're sucked up onto the vehicle, all that shrapnel that enters the vehicle turns into some form of shrapnel, and you could potentially get hit. He's hiding behind the A-pillar, which is a good position. But even if you look at it right here, he engages the suspect almost like slow aim fire. Yeah. If he was taking shots on his position, it would be very different. Yeah. I mean, he is likely, because he had the allocation of time, to have sought his front sight and take slow aim fire. He missed the first shot, looks like, and then he hit him on the second shot or the third shot and then dropped him. There's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of opportunities where they could have upgraded their tactics, but a lot of times this plays out the way it plays out.
Yeah, and it says in the notes that this guy had some suicidal tendencies, so he was looking for that suicide by cop. Since it went there, I think he probably made that decision. Got it. Yeah, he definitely got it. But the other thing too there is kind of like you said, it's like that slow, methodical movement that he has. I mean, it seems like he's enacting on a training script that he's practiced a ton
to the routine.
Right.
He like even the leisure jog to like, oh God, here we go. Here's the guy running away. Always, if you're a police officer, even a civilian, always hard focus yourself to do the right thing. There's never lackadaisical behaviors and habits in dealing with a suspect. Never. Always be switched on and always have the discipline to be switched on. Any excuses for not having the discipline to be switched on is an excuse, and there's no room for it. Let's actually go to the second police officer because I want to judge him too.
Yeah. Both of these guys are veterans, 19 and 20 years.
Look, you could see how look how leisurely he just you could see it right there. Like pause it right when he turns his back and starts running towards the patrol car. Like right there. Man.
Dude, I'd be in full tilt if I was going to run. If I made that decision,
dude, I would have had 15 rounds on that dude moving laterally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you look at this, the distance between him and that guy is about 15 yards. And as he's breaking contact, he's seeking at about 20 yards. Like why would you ever give your back to the suspect? And then why would you ever trust that without the pistol drawn, which I don't think his pistol is even drawn at this point. He's probably drawing it on the way to cover. But again, man, I mean, I don't want to hard judge this dude, but it's like, dude, don't ever turn your back on the suspect.
And if he was a good bad guy, and he drew that gun and started walking at that officer on the other end, putting suppressive fire on top of him, he wouldn't have even been able to get up to shoot, and he would have walked right around the side of that thing and could have killed him.
Imagine if he, at the point in which he turned, that cop wasn't there, and he started running after him. By the time he got set to turn, he would have been dead.
And it's just like that other video we did. I think it was the last time we did one of these reacts videos on that other ambush that happened, where the guy ran around the backside of the car. The cop came up the other side. He seemed like he was so tunnel visioned and just out of it that he wasn't even putting the pieces together of like, oh, this isn't training anymore. This is somebody is shooting back at me, and putting those pieces together in your brain. And if these guys are veterans of the force, they've been doing this for a long time. Maybe they've had a ton of experiences that have never gone bad. It's that whole mindset of like, oh, well, nothing bad's ever happened, so it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It could be, but it just seems that it was very, I mean, like you've said, lackadaisical, but it's just odd to see that in such a emergent circumstance.
Yeah, when 99.999999% of your life is this kind of routine monotony, like people think police officers are running and gunning. 99% of the job is boring, mundane stuff. But when stuff pops off, you got to be able to transition. These guys had a difficult time transitioning. As you could see, this guy, this officer's perspective, he's got a ticket book in one hand, right? He's writing his report, and he's got a pen because he was writing in the other hand. He doesn't drop the pen to go to his gun. He draws his gun with one hand from 25 plus yards, trying to engage a suspect while he's shooting with a pen in the grip of his hand, which is
he's pulling the trigger with his middle finger.
He's pulling the trigger with his middle finger. Like he's got his index finger all wrapped around the pen, and he's pulling the trigger with his middle finger. But in his mind, in his defense, he is presenting the quickest solution that he has. But always the case is try to upgrade your positioning as time progresses. So he even, at some point, I think it shows him turning. Drop the ticket book. Get your support hand up. Get back in the fight. And by the time he does, the other officer winds up engaging him. But play this out. I don't. Yeah, he breaks a shot. Yeah. Like, look at that path. He shoots 3 slow aim fire shots. Boom. Boom.
And then look, still has the pin.
Yeah. And doesn't have his hands on the gun. Oh, man.
Yeah. Scary stuff, man. It seems lackadaisical. And I don't know what that mindset is like in something where you're potentially fighting for your life, where that happens. But it seems very different from normal videos that we look at, right? Like most cops are so hyped in a situation like this that they're almost overreacting.
You're right. Yeah,
And this
they're
is
hitting
almost,
the red line. It's like these guys are an idol.
Yeah.
Going in reverse.
Yeah.
Play this. Is there more of this?
This is right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was right before the switch. And so he's not even looking, which, I mean, I guess you
His
don't.
mustache is getting in the way, too.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's right in the way.
1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 1 1,000. I mean, he had 2 seconds in between shots, and decides to engage. It's like, dude, you're not shooting a national match comp. And I get it because he's trying to get shots on target. But if he just would have thought just a little bit and reinforcing his position, he could have got those shots.
Yeah, and and it's just, I feel like really fortunate for them that this guy acted the way that he acted. He was just interested in dying.
Yeah.
That guy wasn't interested in killing anybody.
Yeah, and he's probably wasted, so
Yeah.
that helps.
I don't understand that mentality, but
How does this play out for the rest of it?
that was the end of it. Is that
Him in
when he ends
what's
it right
the
there.
what's the synopsis?
So let's look at it. So it says here, suspect 21 refused to do the breathalyzer, which we saw. Returned 6 shots, striking in the chest. And it says that he was suicidal, had made suicidal comments in the past, and exhibited suicidal signs that day. The shooting was the 20th.
And he died.
Officer
I'm assuming he
involved.
got killed.
Yep. Fatal shooting. Yep.
Okay.
So the guy died.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, man, good guys go home. Bad guy is where he intended to be.
Yeah.
But just a lot of improvement on tactics.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
a lot of constructive training that you could introduce into scenarios that will assist people in this idea. And scenario-based training is the best type of training because you're not placating to a script.
Yeah.
And you could change these variables. And I like the idea of even introducing into your own training scenarios the mundane. In this scenario, if you're doing law enforcement officers, for example, and it's a sim scenario, have the guy writing a ticket.
Right.
Don't have him like on the gun. Have him doing something where he's not, and it's not always you're flipping the switch and you have to run and gun, but have it to where it's like sometimes it works out where nothing happens, and sometimes you got to be prepared to flip the switch.
And I think that's a trainingism as well, where, they're pulling out the suit. That means we're on the pulling out the Sims guns. I know what's happening here. But if you put on the suit and the Sims guns and did training 20 times where you wrote tickets and nothing happened, and that 21st time you hooked a dude up, that would change somebody's mindset and whoa, that's adding that realistic factor if you don't know what's going to happen. So if it's that extra work, but you put in that extra work in training, it could definitely save your ass.
Yeah. Or you could at least go do 25-meter bulls with shooting with your middle finger with a pin. On the slide.
Definitely. So we'll add that drill to the next Fieldcraft.
I'm glad the officers survived, but definitely more training. We can always use room for improvements, which is why the way that we're doing these videos that were critical. I mean, look, every single person in every scenario that's in a position of defending their life, self-offense, police officers, military could use the training, and there's nothing like criticizing and then taking that criticism and putting it back in the training.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys. We appreciate you tuning in to this Reacts thingamajiggy, I think is what Julian called it now. But
yeah, he has a hard time spelling that because he's Filipino. He has some phonetic thing.
It is.
Thingamajiggy.
He's got a speech thing too. I don't know if you picked up on it.
Yeah, it's an
weird.
impediment.
It is. I think.
No
it is.
offense to it's
No.
just saying facts.
Yeah, it's just
being
facts.
critical so
That's-
we can go back and fix it in the loop.
Exactly. Feedback, just like we're doing.
Yeah, feedback
Reacts,
loop.
right?
Yeah,
So
fix it.
thank you, guys. Check us out, Instagram. Go to the links down in the bio below. And we look forward to seeing you guys. Oh, and also send us more of these. That's where I found some of these is you guys sent me links on Instagram. Send them to Mike, mike.a.glover on Instagram.
Slide in them DMs.
Yeah, I'm Savage Lester. We're going to do a whole episode on why it's Savage Lester because it's not savage like you may know now. But anyway,
Lester.
it's not sometimes it's flaccid, but it's not always flaccid.
Flaccid
Right.
Lester.
Anyway, catch you guys in the next one. Appreciate it.
Later.